Behind these walls lies a city that never sleeps. A city where 20,000 souls live packed together like sardines. A city with its own rules, its own kings, and its own secrets. This is Tihar, India's largest prison. And what happens inside changes people forever. Imagine a place so big, it spreads across 400 acres. That's bigger than 300 football fields. 9 different jails, all connected, all holding thousands of people. Some are waiting for their trial. Some have been sentenced. And some are waiting to die. The guards here have seen things that would make your blood run cold. They've watched friendships turn into betrayals. They've seen power change hands in the blink of an eye. And they've stood outside cells, listening to the last words of men who know exactly when their life will end. But let's start with something strange. On a normal day in May 2023, inside one of Tihar's most secure sections, a man was murdered. His name was Tilu Tajpuriya. He was a gang leader. Powerful, feared, protected, or so everyone thought. What makes this murder strange isn't just that it happened. It's how it happened. Tilu was attacked by 4 men. They didn't use guns. They didn't need to. In less than a minute, they stabbed him dozens of times. Right there, in a prison that's supposed to be one of the most watched places in the country. The question everyone asked was simple. How? If you're curious about what really goes on behind prison walls, hit that subscribe button. Because what we're about to reveal will shock you. Here's what most people don't understand about Tihar. It's not just a prison. It's a business. It's a kingdom. And like any kingdom, it has rulers. But these rulers don't wear crowns. They wear normal clothes, just like everyone else. They sleep in the same crowded rooms. They eat the same food. But make no mistake, they have power. Real power. In Tihar, power comes in many forms. Sometimes it's money. A gang member can have lakhs of rupees smuggled in, hidden in places you wouldn't imagine. Sometimes power is connections, knowing the right guard, the right officer, the right person on the outside who can make things happen. And sometimes, power is simply fear. When Tilu was murdered, investigators discovered something shocking. The weapons used in the attack? They weren't just sharpened spoons. They were real, sharp, deadly blades. Somehow, they'd been brought into one of the most secure prisons in Asia. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. The 4 men who killed Tilu belonged to a rival gang. A gang that had been waiting for the perfect moment. See, in Tihar, there are invisible lines. Lines between gangs. Lines between castes. Lines that, if you cross them, might cost you your life. Tilu's murder sent shockwaves through the prison. Because if someone as powerful as him could be killed, then no one was safe. But Tilu's story is just the beginning. Let me tell you about another man. His name was Prince Tevtiya, a young wrestler. Athletic. In the outside world, he might have been a champion. But inside Tihar, he became a target. Prince belonged to a different gang, one at war with Tilu's group. When Tilu died, some people celebrated. They thought the war was over. They were wrong. Just a few weeks before Tilu's death, Prince was found unconscious in his cell. He'd been beaten. Badly. He died from his injuries. 2 rival gang leaders. Both dead. Both killed inside the same prison. Now, you might be thinking, where were the guards? Where was the security? Good question. Tihar has thousands of guards. Cameras. Metal detectors. Regular checks. But here's the thing about Tihar that makes it different. It's overflowing. The prison was built to hold around 5,200 people. Maybe 10,000 at maximum capacity. But right now, it holds nearly 20,000 inmates. That's double what it was designed for. Imagine a house built for 5 people, but 20 people are living in it. Everyone's cramped. Everyone's uncomfortable. And in that chaos, things slip through the cracks. Guards get tired. They get overwhelmed. And some get corrupted. Because here's a secret that nobody likes to talk about. Money talks in Tihar. Lots of money. Want a better cell? Money. Want your phone smuggled in? Money. Want special food? Money. Want someone taken care of? Money. The gangs inside Tihar aren't just criminals locked away from society. They're still running their operations. Still making deals. Still ordering hits. The walls of Tihar don't stop them. In some ways, the walls protect them. Inside Tihar, they're untouchable by rival gangs on the outside. They have time to plan, time to think, time to build their empires. And the really scary part? Many of the people in Tihar haven't even been found guilty yet. 90% of the inmates are under trials. That means they're waiting for their court cases. Some have been waiting for years. 5 years, 10 years, still waiting for a judge to decide if they're guilty or innocent. Imagine this. Innocent people locked up with hardened criminals. Young men who made one mistake, sharing cells with gang leaders and murderers. This is the reality inside Tihar Jail, a massive prison complex in India. It's a mixing pot, and in that pot, strange things happen. People change. A quiet man becomes violent. A violent man finds peace. Some people find religion, others lose their faith completely. But there's one section of Tihar that's different from all the others. A section where time moves differently, where every day could be your last. I'm talking about death row. In India, the death penalty is reserved for the rarest of rare cases, the worst of the worst crimes. Murder, terrorism, acts so horrible that society decides there's no other option. The men on death row live in a strange kind of limbo. They know they're going to die. They just don't know when. It could be next month, next year, or maybe never if their appeals come through. They live in this suffocating uncertainty, day after day, watching the calendar, wondering if today will be the day they receive the black warrant. Have you ever heard of a black warrant? It's a piece of paper. But it's not just any paper. It's a death notice. It tells you the exact date and time you will be executed. Imagine getting that. Imagine knowing, on this date, at this time, you will die. How would you spend those last days? What would you think about? What would you say? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The guards on death row have an incredibly difficult job. They're not just watching criminals. They're watching human beings count down their final hours. Some guards can't help but become emotionally attached. They see these men at their most vulnerable. One former jailer even wrote a book about his experiences. He described how some inmates become surprisingly calm as their execution nears. They accept their fate. They pray. They write letters. They ask for forgiveness. But others fight it until the very end. They scream. They cry. They beg. And some just go silent. Completely silent. The jailer wrote about one man who stopped talking 3 days before his execution. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep. He just sat there, staring at the wall, waiting. But here's something that shows you how complicated human beings are. Even on death row, even knowing they're going to die, some men still try to escape. They still plot. They still scheme. It seems hope doesn't die easily, even when death is certain. Life in Tihar follows a strict rhythm. Wake up at 5:30 a.m. Head count. Breakfast. Work or classes. Lunch. More work. Dinner. Lights out at 9 p.m. Every single day, the same routine. For years, and for some, for decades. But underneath this rigid schedule, there's always tension. Always the possibility that something could go wrong. A fight could break out. A riot could start. A murder could happen. The guards are trained to watch for the signs. A group of men whispering in a corner. Someone getting too much attention, or someone being isolated by their cellmates. These small details matter. Because in a place like Tihar, violence can explode in seconds. And when it does, it's brutal. The line between order and chaos is razor thin, and the men who live and work there walk that line every single day. The year was 2020. The world was on lockdown. Streets were empty, cities were quiet. But inside Tihar Jail, something was about to happen that would grip the entire nation. 4 men were about to die. Their names were Mukesh Singh, Pawan Gupta, Vinay Sharma, and Akshay Kumar Singh. These were the men convicted in one of the most horrific crimes India had ever seen, the Nirbhaya case. Back in 2012, a young woman was brutally attacked on a bus in Delhi. The details were so terrible that the country erupted. People demanded justice. They demanded the ultimate punishment. After years of trials, the courts agreed. The 4 men were sentenced to hang. But their story on death row is fascinating. For 7 long years, they fought their sentence. Every time an execution date was set, their lawyers would find a new legal loophole, a new petition to file. The date would get pushed back again and again. The public was furious. The victim's family was heartbroken. How could they keep delaying justice? Inside Tihar, the men were changing. One of them reportedly started crying constantly, waking up screaming from nightmares. He lost weight and stopped talking. He was breaking down. Another grew angry and bitter, shouting at the guards, blaming everyone but himself. A third turned to religion, praying 5 times a day, telling guards he had made peace with God. And the fourth? He just went completely silent, waiting. Finally, the black warrant was issued. March 20th, 2020, 5:30 a.m. No more delays. In the final days before an execution, the rules are strict. The men are moved to special cells and watched every 15 minutes. They can't be left alone, not even for a second. The law has a strange, dark rule. They must be alive for the execution. If they harm themselves, the state can't carry out its sentence. They were allowed final requests. One asked for special food. Another wanted to see his mother one last time. These are the last threads of control they have over their own lives. That final night, none of them slept. The guards later said the silence on death row was the loudest they'd ever heard. At 3:30 a.m., the final process began. They were given clean clothes. Most refused a final meal. Fear steals your appetite. One begged for forgiveness, not from the law, but from God. Another remained defiant to the very end, insisting he was innocent. One broke down completely and had to be supported by guards on his way to the gallows. And the silent one remained silent. At exactly 5:30 a.m., all four men were hanged simultaneously. Justice, after 8 long years, was finally served. But the story of executions in Tihar doesn't end there. Let's go back a few years, to 2013, to a very different kind of execution. His name was Afzal Guru, convicted for the 2001 terrorist attack on the Indian parliament. His case was steeped in controversy. But on February 9, 2013, the government decided he would be hanged. What makes his story different is how he faced death. According to the guards, Afzal Guru was calm, completely calm. He prayed, read the Quran, and wrote letters to his family. In his final letter to his wife, he told her to be strong and take care of their son. He didn't beg or break down. He walked to the gallows without resistance, his last words a quiet prayer. But his execution created a massive controversy for another reason. His family wasn't informed beforehand. They heard about it on the news. They never got to say goodbye, and his body was never returned to them. He was buried inside Tihar Jail itself. This caused outrage. How could the state deny a family the right to a proper burial? Why was Afzal Guru's execution kept a secret? The government's answer was simple: security. They feared that announcing it beforehand would trigger riots, protests, and violence. So, they carried it out in the quiet, early morning hours, while most of the country slept. Guru's grave remains inside Tihar, a small patch of earth marking the final resting place of a man who once was. It's a stark reminder that once you enter Tihar, you might never truly leave. But executions in India are exceedingly rare. Since the year 2000, only 4 people have been executed out of thousands sentenced to death. Why so few? The appeals process is a long and winding road, sometimes taking decades. Every death sentence is automatically appealed to the High Court, then the Supreme Court, followed by mercy petitions to the President. This entire process can stretch for 10, 15, even 20 years. Imagine being on death row for that long, trapped in a state of limbo, never knowing if your execution will actually happen. Some prisoners die of natural causes before their sentence is carried out. Others lose their minds from the endless waiting. This psychological toll is so severe it has a name: death row phenomenon. It's the mental and physical deterioration that occurs when someone spends years waiting to die. In letters and interviews, prisoners on Tihar's death row have described the constant anxiety, the nightmares, the feeling that time itself has frozen. Every sound makes them jump. Is that the guard with the black warrant? Is today the day? To cope, some completely disconnect from reality, building fantasy worlds where they are pardoned and freed. Others turn to religion, finding God to be their only source of comfort and hope. And then there are those who simply give up. They stop fighting, stop appealing, and tell their lawyers, enough, just let it end. While death row inmates live in this suspended reality, life in the rest of Tihar Jail moves on. In the general sections, far from the execution yard, there's a surprising amount of activity. Tihar runs workshops where inmates learn skills like carpentry, tailoring, and baking. The goal is rehabilitation, to teach them something useful so they don't return to a life of crime upon release. Tihar even has its own brand of products, all made by prisoners. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The same place that executes men is also trying to reform them. Death and hope existing side by side. There are also education programs. Inmates can study for exams, and some have even earned college degrees while incarcerated. One famous case involved a man who entered Tihar barely literate. Over 15 years, he learned to read, completed high school, got a bachelor's degree, and even started a master's program. When he was finally released, he was a completely different person. But these success stories are the exception, not the rule. The harsh reality is that most people who enter Tihar emerge harder, more damaged, and more likely to reoffend. The severe overcrowding, the constant threat of violence, and the deep-seated corruption take an immense toll. Remember the gang murders we discussed? The killings of Tilu and Prince? Those were not isolated incidents. Stabbings, beatings, and riots are a common feature of life in Tihar. In 2024, a riot erupted in one of the sections. It started over something minor, a dispute about food, but it escalated with terrifying speed. Within minutes, hundreds of inmates were involved, breaking furniture and starting fires. It took guards hours to regain control. Incidents like this reveal just how fragile the peace is inside Tihar. One small spark, and the whole place can explode. The guards know this. They live with this tension every single day. And the conflict isn't just physical. There's psychological warfare too. Gangs intimidate witnesses and threaten families on the outside. They pass messages through visitors, corrupt guards, and even lawyers. The walls of Tihar are supposed to separate criminals from society, but the reality is far messier. The walls are porous. Information, money, and power flow in and out. Tihar is connected to the outside world in ways most people can't even imagine. This brings us to the biggest question of all, a question that has haunted Tihar for decades. Can a place like this ever truly work? Can you lock up 20,000 people in a space designed for half that number and expect anything good to come from it? There's a man who knows Tihar Jail better than almost anyone alive. He's not an inmate. He's not a guard. He's Sunil Gupta, a former jailer who spent decades walking those corridors, watching those cells, and listening to stories most of us will never hear. In his book, Black Warrant, he reveals a side of Tihar that changes everything. He says Tihar isn't just a place for punishment. It's a crucible where human beings, at their absolute lowest, reveal who they truly are. Some reveal monsters. Others, surprising kindness. Sunil tells the story of an inmate serving a life sentence for a brutal murder. Inside Tihar, this man became known for something else entirely. He started teaching other inmates to read, sitting for hours with men who had never held a book. When Sunil asked him why, the man said, "Outside, I took a life. Inside, I'm trying to give something back." But for every story of redemption, there are 10 darker ones. Inmates who master the art of pretending. They act perfectly reformed for the parole board, convincing everyone they've changed. And the moment they're released, they go right back to crime, sometimes returning to Tihar within months. This is the great mystery of any prison. How do you tell who has genuinely changed and who is just playing a role? The truth is, you can't know for sure. It's always an educated guess. And sometimes, that guess is wrong. Sunil's book also takes us into the chilling days leading up to an execution. He describes the cold, mechanical process. A hangman arrives days before. Yes, a real person who still carries out this duty in modern India. The hangman inspects the gallows, tests the rope, and calculates the precise drop distance based on the condemned person's weight. Too short, and death is slow. Too long, and it's gruesome. It has to be exact. But beneath this clinical procedure, raw human emotion boils over. Sunil describes watching a condemned man's last meal. He'd ordered his childhood favorite, his mother's recipe. He took one bite and just started crying, unable to eat, overwhelmed by memory. These are the moments between the crime and the punishment that never make the news. But let's talk about something the news definitely covered. In 2021, Aftab Poonawalla was brought to Tihar, accused of murdering his girlfriend and dismembering her body into 35 pieces. When news of this crime spread through the jail, something unusual happened. The other inmates, murderers, robbers, hardened gangsters, were disgusted. Horrified, Aftab had to be kept in isolation, not for his own protection from the guards, but from the other prisoners. Even among criminals, there's a code. Certain crimes are considered beyond the pale, and Aftab had crossed that line. He was facing a social death while still alive. The story of Tihar is also the story of Delhi. Built in the 1950s on the city's outskirts, it was meant to be separate from society. But Delhi grew, swallowing the land around it. Today, Tihar is surrounded by neighborhoods, schools, and markets. The prison is no longer isolated. It's a part of the city's fabric. Now, There's a plan to move Tihar far away. But will a new location solve the real problems? Overcrowding, corruption, and a justice system that moves at a crawl? Or is it just putting a fresh coat of paint on a broken house? A researcher once asked hundreds of Tihar inmates a simple question: what do you think about most? The most common answer wasn't freedom or family. It was time. Time is the currency of prison. It's what you lose, what you trade, what you count. I've been here for 3,847 days, one man said. That's 10 years, 6 months, and 17 days. But who's counting? He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Time in prison warps. Days feel like weeks, yet years vanish in a blur of sameness. This slow erosion of self is called institutionalization. Men forget how to make simple decisions. Some get released after decades and commit a small crime just to go back. Because prison, as horrible as it is, has become their home. And then there are the invisible victims, the children of Tihar. When a woman is incarcerated with a young child, the child comes with her. They can stay until they're 6. Imagine a world where your playground is a prison courtyard. Your lullabies are the sounds of cell doors closing. These children committed no crime, but they serve a sentence anyway. Their early years are shaped by walls and guards, and when they turn 6, they are sent away, often carrying deep emotional scars for life. For every inmate in Tihar, there's a family on the outside, a community left behind. Tihar isn't just a building on the edge of a city. It's a reflection of our society, our justice system, and the complex, often contradictory nature of humanity itself. What do you think is the biggest problem facing prisons today? When you picture an inmate in Tihar, India's largest prison complex, you probably imagine someone poor, uneducated, desperate. And many are. But not everyone. There are successful businessmen in Tihar, politicians, doctors, and engineers. People who had everything and, for one reason or another, threw it all away. In fact, one cell block is informally known as the VIP section. This is where the high-profile inmates live: former government ministers, corporate executives, even celebrities. They have connections, money, and power. And for them, prison is a very different experience. They often get better cells, better food, and more privileges. Some reportedly continue running their businesses from the inside, making calls and sending emails through corrupt guards. This is the ugly truth, not just about Tihar, but about justice systems worldwide. Justice isn't always blind. It sees money, it sees power, and it treats people differently based on what they have. Think about it. A poor man steals food because his family is starving. He might get 5 years. A wealthy man commits fraud, stealing millions from the public. He gets bail, delays his trial for a decade, and might serve a couple of years in a more comfortable setting. Both are crimes, but the punishments are worlds apart. This blatant inequality breeds anger and resentment. The less privileged inmates see the special treatment given to the rich and powerful, and they think the whole system is rigged. And can you honestly blame them? It's a feeling that erodes any hope for genuine rehabilitation. But amidst all this darkness, there are glimmers of light. Tihar has a Vipassana meditation program. Inmates can volunteer for a 10-day intensive course. For those 10 days, they live in complete silence. No talking, no interacting, just sitting with their own thoughts, observing their own minds. For some, it is the most transformative experience of their lives. They are forced to confront their guilt, their pain, and the consequences of their actions. And some of them genuinely change. One inmate, a man convicted of murder, completed the course. Afterwards, he wrote a letter to the victim's family. He wasn't asking for their forgiveness. He simply wanted to express his deep, genuine remorse. The family never wrote back. But the inmate said that writing that letter, expressing that truth, freed something inside him. It didn't change his sentence or bring the victim back, but it changed him. These small moments of redemption don't make the headlines. But they happen, quietly, in the shadows of Tihar. So what is Tihar really? Is it a house of horrors ruled by violence and corruption? Yes. Is it a place where some people find a path to genuine change? Also yes. Is it a broken system that desperately needs reform? The truth is, Tihar is all these things at once. It's complicated, messy, and profoundly human. Tihar is a mirror reflecting our society's deepest problems: poverty, inequality, violence, corruption, and a justice system that moves at a glacial pace. You can't fix Tihar without fixing these larger issues. Until we address these root causes, places like Tihar will continue to exist, overcrowded, violent, and trapped in a hopeless cycle between punishment and rehabilitation, succeeding at neither. The 20,000 souls inside those walls are human beings. Some did terrible things. Some made small mistakes and got lost in the system. Some are innocent, still waiting for their day in court. They all share one thing. They are trapped. And the guards, the staff, the administrators, they're trapped too, trying to manage an impossible situation with limited resources and overwhelming challenges. A former jailer of Tihar, Sunil Gupta, ended his book with a powerful question. It's a question we should all consider. Because Tihar exists because we, as a society, demand it. We want criminals punished, locked away, made to suffer. But we rarely think about what happens next. We don't think about the human cost, the generational trauma, the cycle that keeps repeating. A person commits a crime, goes to prison, comes out more broken than before, and the cycle starts again. Breaking that cycle requires more than just bigger prisons or stricter laws. It requires understanding, resources, support systems, and the possibility of a second chance. It requires seeing inmates not as monsters, but as human beings who made terrible choices. And that's hard, especially when their crimes are horrific. But the alternative, the system we have now, clearly isn't working. So Tihar stands, a city within a city, a world within a world. Behind those walls, life continues, violent, tragic, and sometimes even beautiful. And the rest of us? We drive past those walls, maybe every single day, knowing what's inside. Until the next riot, the next big story, the next headline. Then, for a moment, we remember Tihar exists. Thanks for watching. If this story made you think, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into the worlds we often ignore.